Patch 3.0 for Tekken 8 recently dropped, and with it came a few changes for Reina. Now I feel that she's largely still the same character for Season 2, but this video is to help you get up to speed so that you're fully prepared for Season 3. This applies to both Reina players and those of you looking to defend against her. So let's get started. Firstly, a nerf. Her charge move, forward 3+4, now has reduced tracking. Do note that reduced is the key word here, because it still has ridiculous tracking to sidewalk left. But if she fully charges and you sidewalk right, can punish her very easily. Now of course, this move has two different states of charge, uncharged and fully charged. My advice is to set Reina to do the uncharged version of forward 3+4 and practice sidestepping right, because this is pretty consistent. If I try to sidewalk, I get clipped. Unless my timing is very specific. Once you can sidestep and punish this version of the move consistently, you'll find that if Reina fully charges the move, your punish will counter hit her out of it on the same timing. Now this of course only applies to when Reina actually fully charges the move, because she does have the option to cancel at various states of charge. So if you want to basically option select this, I would advise sidestep right and then interrupt with a fast mid. Another nerf is Reina's Sen 2 is now -6 on block. Same thing with her 2-2-2 string. This is significant in a couple of ways, because something like Sen 2 into back 4 will no longer crush jabs because Reina doesn't have the frames for the high crush. This also limits her movement options because, for example, at -5, Reina can sidestep her own down forward 1. But at -6, this is no longer the case. They did kind of compensate this by having the parry window for Heaven's Wrath activate earlier, so now it eats jabs when you transition into Wrath in heat. But with players who are familiar with the matchup, this change doesn't really make much of a difference because most players aren't going to be pressing jabs or down forward ones in this situation in any case. If you transition into Wrath off of Sen 2 on block, this is functionally the same as transitioning into Wrath off of Sen 1+2, which is forced. With that in mind, you'll deal with this situation in exactly the same way as Sen 1+2 on block. Since a 14 frame move is basically guaranteed if Reina just cancels the stance, a lot of Reinas will try to take their turn back with a power crush. In which case, when Reina does not have heat active, anything up to 11 frames will interrupt this power crush, so your 10 frame is guaranteed. However, if heat is active, your jabs will be eaten. In my experience, the best way to deal with this is simply to go for a throw, because if Reina tries to steal her turn, the throw becomes unbreakable, and if she just goes into Wrath, she has to break the throw in any case. Perhaps not the most optimal situation for you, but it reduces the mental stack. However, if you do have a read that the Reina is gonna stay in Wrath, just hop kick or use an otherwise unparryable move. And now for her buffs. Firstly, Wrath 1 into empty Sentai has now been made safer. Bear in mind, this only applies to empty Sen, because if Reina commits to an option from Sen, the frame situation is exactly the same, and any counterplay you might have labbed still applies. But if you have a read that she's gonna enter Sentai and do nothing, she's functionally -13. So you see my 14 frame punish does not connect, but my 13 frame does. And a welcome change for the Reina players is that 1-1-2 into Sen is no longer punishable, because if you didn't commit to an option in Sen, you could actually get launched for that, if the opponent had a read. Functionally speaking, when Reina does 1-1-2 into empty Sen, she is now -1. So I have the bot set to do a 12 frame move after landing a 1-1-2, and when she does this, it trades with my 13 frame down forward 1. This makes Reina's 10 frame punish a lot more useful since you're not forced to commit to an option from Sentai to stop any potential opponent retaliation, and you can actually go for a bit of a mix-up because the recovery is so good now. And then we have down back 2, which is already not the best low because no evasion, very little tracking. The only good thing about it is that it does 22 damage in all honesty, but it's -3 on normal hit. However, in Season 3, now if you get a counter hit, it's +3. I don't imagine this is going to make much of a difference, but just keep in mind that if you do get counter hit, Reina is now plus. And now, down 2, which has a new animation, but also a new property on counter hit. You still get your knockdown into a guaranteed follow-up, as you can see. And you can dash in and stomp for a bit more damage in case you don't want the Oki. The new property means that down 2 counter hitting on stages with floor gimmicks triggers them, which means you get a full combo. I would say that this change is pretty significant because if you wanted the same outcome in neutral, you had to counter hit with down forward 3+4, which is both 16 frames and minus 15 on block, although there is a mind game because the second hit does counter hit launch but is minus 14. Now, when Reina is having a poking battle, she doesn't have to risk getting punished for doing this move and can instead be much safer by just doing down 2. Down 2's range is a bit stubby and it's quite linear, so not the most abusable move, but still something to look out for. And now her new move, Unsoku 2 or Stone Cutter. This is a 13 frame homing high that's plus 8 on hit and minus 3 on block. And I believe its main purpose is to serve as a frame trap for when you do 1-2-2 into Unsoku or when you land a down 2 1+2 on block. It does have quite short range, so after down 2 1+2 on block, it can be backdashed. However, the same cannot be said for 1-2-2 into Unsoku. Previously, if your opponent used Power Crush in these situations, then it would absorb the mids, and your option to counter this was to do Unsoku down 4, or just to cancel the stance, and perhaps get a punish. But now, you can frame trap and get up to a 14 frame mid, guaranteed. This move does make her Unsoku stance a lot more threatening, especially from her 1-2-2 punish, because of all the options she has and the limited options from the defender. But when you block down 2 1+2, backdashing is not such a bad idea, because it avoids both Unsoku 2 and a potential Hell Sweep. Now here's a little setup. If you do Wrath 1 into Unsoku, Reina is 0 on block, and this move is 13 frames. Now some opponents might want to check you with the down forward 1 because it's not such a bad idea, and she does have 2 transitions from Wrath 1, one into Sentai and one into Unsoku. But if you have this read at the right time and spacing, something disgusting might happen. Entirely guaranteed. And if you happen to have rage when this situation occurs in the open, now bear in mind that this frame situation is not universal. So for instance, Jun is gonna do down forward 1 upon blocking this. And she's only minus 15, but if you're fast enough, you can still get forward 2 into Sen 3. And of course, at the wall, you still get your wall splat, your heat engage, your wall combo, all that good stuff. If there's anything to take away from this, as the defender, do not check Reina with down forward 1 after you block Wrath 1. I have a list here on screen for the different frame data when you trade with 13 frame moves. Bear in mind that characters like Fakamlam, they don't have a traditional down forward 1, and so that frame date does for his standing 3. The same applies for Kazuya, that frame date does for his down forward 4. But this gives you an indication of what is guaranteed if your Unsoku 2 trades with a down forward 1. Something not mentioned in the patch notes is that in Season 2, for some reason, when you did down 2 1+2, you were unable to use Reina's charge move from there, and instead Unsoku 3 would come out. But this has since been fixed. Reina also has a new voice line when she engages heat. Shush. I believe it means for shame or ridiculous. I believe this is the same thing that Heihachi says when he does his mid-electric from Fujin stance. But of course, Reina would never say something so disrespectful to her own father, so when she engages heat, she instead tells him... I'm not sure what this one means. I'm not that big of a weeb. And that's going to be it from me for today. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. And until next time, I hope you have a blessed day ahead.